All right, so Matt, when you die, what is the last body part on you to actually die?
Your toes.
It's your pupils because they dilate.
No. I just gave you a regular answer, not even like a joke answer. Well, I, all of a sudden I thought we were playing trivia.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Graveyard trivia. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
Man, I'm doing great. How about you, buddy?
I'm doing good. Our neighbors were mowing just a second ago. I think they've quit now, but just giving y'all a heads up in case you hear anything.
So everybody around here has been mowing their grass at night because it's been so hot.
Yep.
It's weird. Most everybody's got headlights. They could. Saw somebody last night. I was coming through, and I said, "They're gonna hate it when they get up in the morning and they look where they've been push mowing this yard in the dark."
Right.
They're gonna be like, "Oh my God, it's
man,
it's gonna be like you tried to give yourself your own haircut."
Yeah, with your eyes closed. I mean, that's the Texas way, though. It gets so hot here that middle of the summer, if you're mowing, you got to do it early morning or late in the evening. Otherwise, you're dying. It's like reverse hibernation. You go into hibernation in the middle of the day so you don't have a heat stroke. Real quick, though, we want to say go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. You can find some different shows to listen to. We are proud to be part of the Podbelly Network. Good group of podcasts there that you can go find on their website. So go over there and check them out at podbelly.com. We also want to thank tonight's sponsors, Lucy Nicotine, HelloFresh, and a new one, Raycon. So we will talk a little bit more about them later. While you're on the internet, surfing around, looking up things you probably shouldn't be before you clear your internet search history, go over to patreon.com/Graveyard Tales, and you can sign up to become a patron if you are not yet. And you can pick $1, $5, or $10 levels, and you get different things for each level. And for our $10 members, you get an ad-free video version of the episode every week. And so you get to see Matt and I do our thing and make weird faces at each other when we mess up. And
like I just did.
Yep. And I don't cut out as much on those episodes. So you do get to see us make mistakes. Or if we got to take a break and let's look something up real quick, you get to see us do that. So if that interests you to kind of see how the sausage is made, then go over there and check that out at $10. But for all the other levels, you do get at least one episode per week. Sometimes we do two as a bonus episode, and it's different topics. Sometimes it matches up with regular Graveyard Tales episodes, but other times it's just fun stuff that we want to talk about. And We've started doing quizzes here lately where one of us quizzes the other one on Do You Know? We just did origin of phrases and origins of words and stuff like that. So it's fun if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Warning, this product contains non-tobacco nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Look, we're all adults here. And some of us choose to use nicotine to relax or to focus or just unwind after a long day. Lucy Nicotine is a company that was created to help nicotine users find a cleaner option and feel better about the ways they consume nicotine. Now, if you've seen the videos of our show, you know that Adam and I both are nicotine users. We both vape, but there are times when it's just not a possibility.
Right.
You know, you're at work, you're on a plane, you know, you're standing in line somewhere, and you would feel better if you could use, you know, nicotine.
Right.
And Lucy is an easy, clean way to use nicotine and, you know, not have to worry about people giving you a dirty look or anything like that.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, it happens. Now, Lucy Slim pouches use the newest technology for synthesizing pure nicotine in the lab. None of the tobacco, all of the nicotine satisfaction. Lucy Slim pouches include both coconut oil and gum base to provide a soft, fluffy texture that enhances the flavor and doesn't dry out your mouth.
That's right. And they come in 3 different strengths, 4, 8, and 12 milligrams, and 3 exclusive delicious flavors, spearmint, mango, and cool cider. And cool cider happens to be my favorite. Matt, I know you like the mango one quite a bit. And the cool thing about these is like Matt was saying, you know, you just pop one of these little slim pouches in and you don't have to worry about it. And I know a lot of people have the stigma about pouches where they're like, oh, well, I need a spit cup. Or no, you don't need a spit cup with the Lucy nicotine. You just pop it into your mouth, stick it between your cheek and gum, and go. You don't have to spit. You don't have to do any of that gross, nasty stuff that you would with tobacco pouches. So it's great. And, you know, like Matt was saying, if you're in the store or something like that, we went furniture shopping the other weekend, and we went to Nebraska Furniture Mart. And I don't know if anybody knows how big that store is, but that is a huge store. And so I knew we were going to be in there for a while, so I brought the slim pouch with me, and sure enough, popped one in part of the way through, and me and my crowd anxiety, it helped out quite a bit. So if you're on a shopping spree with your significant other and you feel the craving for nicotine, you don't have to stop and go out and have a smoke break or a vape break or anything like that with these Lucy nicotine pouches.
Yeah, absolutely. So Graveyard Tales listeners can go to lucy.co and use promo code GRAVE, that's GRAVE, to get 20% off your first order of Lucy Slim pouches or any other Lucy products.
That's right. Graveyard Tales listeners just need to go to lucy.co, lucy.co, and use our promo code GRAVE, that's GRAVE, to get 20% off your order of slim pouches or any of their other products. Remember, that's lucy.co. Use our promo code GRAVE at checkout.
Warning, this product contains non-tobacco nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
So, Matt, that's all I've got for the intro of this episode. Why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother? It's slightly different.
Yeah, slightly different. Where I don't know that we've had a show quite like this. But we talked about this topic and it interested both of us. We figured, well, if it interests us, it probably will interest our listeners too. Mm-hmm. So these kind of stories are always really intriguing to me. And it just seems like there's so many that come up when you start looking into the history of war around the planet, that there will be all these legends and tales of all kinds of stuff. We've even heard ghost stories.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Come out of the actual war, not ghosts from that war. People who reported seeing weird things or experiencing strange things during war.
Ghosts and aliens and UFOs and all sorts of stuff. Cryptids.
Yeah. So it's always been fascinating to me, these legends that come out from wartime. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to go back to World War II, and we're going to talk about Yamashita's treasure, or Yamashita's gold, as it's sometimes referred to. Yamashita was a Japanese general who was in charge of Japanese forces in the Philippines late during World War II. And it's possible that he may have hidden one of the largest, what would you say, plunder, maybe? Looting?
Yeah, plunder's a good
war,
term for it.
Spoils of war in history somewhere in the Philippines. And people have gone after it. And it's the whole, some people don't even believe that it actually exists.
Right.
So, you know, when you throw that in on top of everything, my ears perk up. Oh, wait.
Mm-hmm.
There's a treasure that people have been hunting for, and it may not even be there.
Right.
Oh, I like this. So we're going to talk about some history, because it's crucial to understanding what has been done since then.
Mm-hmm.
So Adam's going to dig into this history, tell you this story about what happened, and then we're going to talk about some of the folks that have gone after it.
Right. And I was telling Matt before the mics got hot that this is probably an episode where I had to do the most condensing of history, because there's so many rabbit holes that you can go down with this history that we could have done a 3-parter on this, and 2 of those parts is the history of the episode. However, like Matt said, the history is crucial. I did my best to get it together in a cohesive manner where it's understandable and you get all the parts, but we're not overloading you too much. So as we say, go check our sources down in the bottom of the show notes if you want to finish, expand on the research that we've done or to keep going or anything like that. Go check our sources. And kind of a warning, the history is of the war. It's of World War II. And as we all know, World War II was brutal. So I'm not going to go too hardcore on the atrocities of war, but we will touch on them some. So just be aware of that. So during World War II, the Japanese army spent 6 years or more engaging in the biggest plunder in history. They were rampaging through China, Korea, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and they systematically stripped the countries of wealth that these countries had built up over thousands of years. So they would go through and just, plunder and pillage and take these countries' treasures, all sorts of treasures that they had built up. It was the history of these countries, and they would take it. And the wealth was actually collected by a secret organization known as the Golden Lily. And we got to look at them real quick, but it's one of those weird things with secret societies. There's information out there on it, but then there's not information that you think there would be, because it was a secret society in a communist regime. Mm-hmm. So that information, even after the war, didn't come out like you would think it would. So it was hard to get some of this information. Now, Operation Golden Lily was between 1936 and 1942, approximately, and they were acting under the orders of the Imperial House of Japan. It was a secret unit led by the younger brother of the emperor, Prince Chichibu. He was a military man and an Oxford scholar. So Prince Chichibu was a super smart guy. He knew the tactics of war, and he was an Oxford scholar. Yeah, so this guy was smart.
His name sounds like a video game character.
Yeah, it does. And he's got a lot longer name. If you look him up, Chichibu is the shortened version of that. And it's the easiest way for my dumb Southern tongue to say it.
Yeah.
So I heard him called Chichibu in an interview, and I went, you know what? I'm going to go with Chichibu because that's easier for me to say.
Yeah. And it sounds like a Pokemon.
Right. The Operation Golden Lily was commissioned to methodically pillage Southeast Asia. Now, this unit was called Kin no Yuri, or Golden Lily, and the Golden Lily would leave every country it pillaged penniless. They would take everything for the Japanese emperor of the time. They raided museums, art galleries, temples, rare books, and they were so thorough that they even targeted the black markets, and they would drain the black markets of everything they had of value. So they knew what they wanted. They knew where it was from the intel that they had, and they took it. And they didn't care how they got it.
I know. I mean, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter. Priceless works of art, religious artifacts.
Yep.
I mean, you name it.
Yep. They would.
Took it.
If you had any religious artifact or wealth in your church, in your mosque or whatever, they'd come and take it. They didn't care. And they were brutal. When the Golden Lily came into town, they left, and they left you destitute afterward. The quantity of the treasure that they amassed is said to be at least $1 trillion US. So, like I said, it's more than just gold and jewels. The treasure had everything. So combined, it was $1 trillion, maybe more, of gold, jewels, rare antiquities, religious artifacts, books. It was crazy.
They even said they speculate that there were top secret military plans.
Yeah, most likely.
Also, you can't even put a value on something like that now.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine if you had original documents that were Japanese top secret war plans from World War II? Can you imagine how valuable that would be?
Right.
To museums, collectors, you name it. I mean, hell, to the Japanese government.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine. And, you can't even put a price tag on that stuff. So I would estimate that if those things were also with this, with this loot, that, it would way exceed $1 trillion.
Oh yeah, probably. 1 trillion was the safe estimate that I heard, but since we're not actually sure, they just kind of figured up everything that they possibly could have gotten a hold of. But then there's stuff in there that we have no idea that could be in there. There's, as you'll probably talk about, there's golden statues that are worth thousands, just the statue itself. But like you were saying with the military documents, yeah, they're, for historical purposes, they could bring a lot of money. But if you're talking even at the time when they were doing it, if we now had top secret military documents of an enemy of ours, that would be worth a lot of money, just current times. So even for them at the time, if they had top secret military documents from other militaries, that would be worth a ton of money too.
Yep.
Now, amassing the treasure was just part of the Golden Lily's mission. They also have to get the treasure back to Japan. So in order to do that, they first melted all the gold down into ingots and bars. Now, they melted it down because not only did it make it easier for transport, but it helped them kind of hide where the gold came from. Because when gold is manufactured, it's always stamped with some identification mark showing when it's made, where it's made, the country of origin of this gold. So melting
and carat weight.
Yes, exactly. So melting it down erased all of those marks from this gold. And when they formed it back into ingots and bars, they were then able to add the Japanese mark on it. So it looks like it was gold made in Japan of Japanese origin. So it can't be, if it were to be found or taken or anything, you couldn't say, hey, this is my gold that you stole from me. See the mark right here. No, this is Japanese gold. See, it's got the Japanese mark. And so it was not only to make it easier to stack and carry back to Japan, but it was devious in that sense that now it's marked as their gold. You have no claim to it anymore. Now, the treasure itself, as it was being amassed, was first taken to the Philippines and is inventoried. So it comes into the Philippines because it was in it was like the central hub of the Japanese Empire at the time. So it was the most central point where they could bring all the gold into, and then they would inventory it, smelt it down, form it, and then pack it up into ships and send it from the Philippines over to Japan. And they had system going, and this system was going well for several years up until June of 1942. Now, in June of 1942 was when the Japanese and U.S. armies met near the island of Midway. And during this battle between the U.S. and the Japanese lost control of the seas at this point. Mm-hmm. Because the U.S. killed thousands and thousands of Japanese soldiers. They sank several of the Japanese aircraft carriers and shot down many of their planes. So at this point, the tide of the war was turning for the Japanese. They were losing control of this area, and they no longer had control of this waterway in order to ship their gold from the Philippines back to their home base in Japan. So they couldn't risk doing that anymore, because if they were to try to ship this gold back to Japan, the U.S. would more than likely either sink the ship or capture the ship and take all the gold. So they had to turn to their best general, Tomoyuki Yamashita. Now, Yamashita is asked to come up with a plan for the treasure, since it's now stuck in the Philippines and they can't move it. He is told to hide the gold till it's safe to move it again. So we got to look at Tomoyuki Yamashita for a minute so we can kind of understand why they chose him. Now, Yamashita, he's also called Yamashita Hoban, which is Tiger of Malaya. He was born November 8th, 1885 in Kochi, Japan. He died February 23rd, 1946 in Manila, Philippines, and we'll get to that. But he was a Japanese general known for his successful attacks on Malay and Singapore during World War II. After graduating from the Army Academy in 1905 and the Army War College in 1916, Yamashita was an officer for the Army General Staff Office. He rose rapidly through the ranks of the Imperial Army, eventually becoming the highest-ranking general of its Air Force. He was an able strategist, and he trained Japanese soldiers in the technique of jungle warfare and helped conceive the military plan for the Japanese invasion of the Thai and Malay peninsulas in 1941 and 1942. So the jungle warfare strategist will come into play big time later. So keep that in mind. But as we can already see, this is a bad man. He's not somebody you would want to tangle with. He knows what he's doing. He's smart, and and he's a heck of a general. Now, in the course of a 10-week campaign, Yamashita's 25th Army overran all of Malay and obtained the surrender of the huge British naval base at Singapore on February 15th, 1942. So soon after Yamashita was retired by Prime Minister Tojo Hideki to an army training command in Manchuria, and he did not see active service again until after Tojo's fall in 1944, when he was sent to command the defense of the Philippines. Now, his forces were badly defeated in both the Leyte and Luzon campaigns, but he held out until after the general surrender was announced from Tokyo in August 1945. Now, Yamashita was tried for war crimes, and though he denied knowing any of the atrocities committed under his command, he was convicted and eventually hanged. So that will come into play later too, but that kind of gives you a brief rundown of Yamashita and why he was the man that they picked. So let's get back to the plans that Yamashita had to come up with to hide the treasure. So Yamashita decided to keep the treasure in the Philippines because it was safer than trying to move it. So it's there. He's going to keep what is left, mind you. This is what's left of the treasure that hasn't been shipped to Japan already. So he found 175 different sites to bury the gold until the Japanese took control of the area again and could come back for it. So he chose spots that had very mountainous terrain with really thick jungle. And this was so that once the area was sealed, the jungle would take back over quickly and it would look like no one had been there. Because if you've ever seen the jungles in the Philippines, they're wild. They got plants everywhere. And if you know anything about jungles, the flora takes over quickly. You can, in a healthy ecosystem like the jungles, if you cut down some trees or vines or whatever, it will grow back pretty quickly. So his plan was to, let's put this in a mountainous area where it's hard to get to, and then the jungle will cover it back up and people won't be able to tell that we were there.
Pretty good plan.
I agree. I think that's probably the best plan that he could come up with, and that's why they picked him. He was a strategist, and he knew the jungle. Now, Yamashita actually ordered detailed maps of the areas that the gold was going to be buried. He wanted them to be really detailed and encoded, so only a select few could actually read the maps. Now, they were encoded using an old Japanese dialect called kunji. Now, it's a language that's between 1,500 and 2,000 years old. So you can imagine there's probably not many people left that can speak kunji.
Right.
Now, the maps themselves had no topographical details on them at all. So the only way to know what the landmarks are is by reading the kunji characters used to mark which landmark is which. So if you see a map, if you don't know what topographical details are, if you see a map, usually you'll see different color-coded regions, and depending on the color will depend on the height of the terrain. So you'll be able to tell by looking at a flat map, okay, this is this color, so that means it's a high peak, but this over here is a different color, so it's a valley. So you can kind of figure out your terrain by looking at the topography on this map. And sometimes they'll even have like rings with numbers, so the elevation of this mountain, and you can tell by that. But they took all of that off, and the maps are just a 2D line drawing. I'll put some pictures up in Patreon of these maps that they only have pictures of a couple, but they're just line drawings, and they have weird symbols that don't mean anything to anybody unless you know the language or what they were trying to encode it with. And that's it. So if you have one of these maps, if you don't know how to read this map, you're not going to be able to pick it out by looking at the topography of this thing and saying, oh, this looks like this hill over here because it's a hill with valleys on either side. They don't have that on there. But the symbols that they used and the words that they used actually denote which is which. So you've got to be able to read kanji to figure that out.
Yeah. And you look at it, it looks cool. You're not going to figure anything out from it.
No.
I mean, you're just not. Unless you're that rare person that has a degree in kanji.
Right.
Dead languages.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And if you don't know the language, then the maps are completely useless.
Mm-hmm.
So that, again, a great plan on his part. Now, on top of the maps being encoded, they also put other security measures into the tunnels that they dug. So they added booby traps to every one of the tunnels. They would put bombs and grenades in them with tripwires so that if you hit the tripwires, it would blow up. They had false doors in the tunnels. So if you were going through this tunnel, there would be a false door that you would think, okay, I need to go this way through it. But the real door was covered over in rock or it just looked like a dead end. So it would force you to go through this false door into a room that was filled with booby traps.
Mm-hmm.
They used poisonous gas in some of these, and they actually figured out how to use the water table and groundwater. So if you didn't know anything about it, the water level could come up and drown you while you're trying to get to the treasure. So this is very Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I kept thinking when I was reading this is if these details are correct. Now, this is all what the story is. So if all these details are correct, then very Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones had to have gotten it from this.
That's right.
I'm going to say that it was Indiana Jones was made based on these Yamashita gold tunnels.
You know, there's the big giant ball rolling down at you.
Right.
You know,
right.
That just seems to chase you throughout the tunnels. And,
yep.
you know, you got to, the weighted panels or foot plates you have to stand on to make something, and then something else happens and you get shot by arrows.
I mean, I can see that.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
Yeah, it does.
It really does.
Yep. And, you know, the poisonous gas and the use of the water table and everything is the part that kind of makes you feel that way, because people have been using bomb booby traps for a long time. But the ingenious part is using the poisonous gas in the water. And if you might get yourself stuck in a part of one of these tunnels that you've made it past the bombs, you've made it past the attack pigeons that they put in there, and now you're to this false door, and you open this false door, and all of a sudden that releases groundwater and it drowns you.
Yeah.
It's wild. Now, the maps they made highlighted where each one of these booby traps actually were and what they were. So if you had the map and could read it, then you'd be able to avoid them. But if you didn't, you probably wouldn't make it out of the tunnel alive. So again, it would be really good to be able to read kanji and have one of these maps if you're going to look for it. Now, to ensure that the locations of these tunnels didn't get leaked, they kept the people who knew about all of this information to a bare minimum. As they say, they played it really close to the vest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they used either POWs, prisoners of war, during World War II to dig and construct the tunnels, or they used local slave labor. The people digging these tunnels, either the slaves of the Japanese or the prisoners of war for the Japanese, had no idea why they were digging these tunnels in the first place. But in the end, it didn't matter, because when they were finished, Yamashita and his men would kill them to make sure they didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
So if you got put on Yamashita detail, you weren't making it back from that. That was your last mission for Yamashita.
I'd be like, I ain't gonna dig crap. You're just gonna have to kill me now.
Right?
Because I'd be doggone if I'm gonna die tired.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I tell you, I mean, it's hard to say what you would do in that situation, but I feel like my contrary ass would say, I got a shovel. I'm going to take a running start at this guy with my shovel. And I mean, he's going to kill me anyway. So at least maybe I can die flailing at him, maybe uselessly flailing at him, but I'll feel like I did something. But yeah, I mean, they picked people that they already had control of and then made them dig these elaborate tunnels and then killed them. So they knew what it was, but they didn't know for long. Now, in October of 1944, the Americans actually landed in the Philippines, and the fighting of World War II takes over the islands. And it said that the fighting on the Philippine Islands was the most brutal of World War II. Even though Yamashita was bearing the treasure, he still was leading troops against the Americans. But despite his prowess for battle, he couldn't stop the advance of the Americans, because people have said that islands like the Philippines are really hard to defend. Mm-hmm. So Yamashita would have known that. He would know, look, I'm not going to be able to defend all of these hundreds of Philippine islands from the American force. So he understood at that point that the treasure still wasn't safe, and that the only thing he could do is drag out the fighting as long as possible so that it would buy him time to finish burying the gold. So he knew it's in the end, it's a lost cause, but if I can make this last longer, if I can make them work harder, then I buy myself and my men more time to bury this gold. Right.
So he's thinking at this point, all I got to do is stall him.
Yeah. Yep.
Just slow him down a little bit.
Right. Because he's thinking in the end, it's more about the gold than keeping the Philippines.
Yeah. Well, this says something about Yamashita, because if you're the general, if you're the commander of Japanese forces in the Philippines, and the U.S. military is coming down on you hot and heavy, and you've got all this treasure, at what point does it cross your mind, I'm going to make a deal?
Yeah.
Hey, you take all this gold, you get rich, you let me get out of here.
Yeah.
You let me get back to Japan. You let me do something. Now, you got to find the right person.
Yep.
Not everybody is going to be like, everybody like, nope, you're bad, dude. We let you live, you're going to cause more problems.
Right.
So we're going to take you and try you. Well, I mean, which is what happened. But at no point does Yamashita seem like he's given up. He's doing all this for his country. He knows what's coming.
Oh yeah.
He knows he's not going to enjoy the spoils of his work, but he's going to do this for his country. Right.
It's not, at this point, it's not about him. So yeah. I mean, he understands.
You got to give him credit, man. He was loyal to his country. He was
loyal. He was ruthless, and he was smart. And again, that's why they entrusted him with this mission. In April 1945, Yamashita is still trying to finish the tunnels. And he's, at this point, forced to retreat back to a mountain city called Baguio. And so he's up in the mountains in or around Baguio. And Baguio is actually where the Americans will end up defeating and capturing him, but we'll keep going. The systematic nature of the hiding of the gold is now kind of out the window. And it's just like, well, screw it. We can't keep doing this systematic, build a tunnel, put the gold in there, do the booby traps, all that stuff. It's now at a fast and frenzied pace because the Japanese are about to be defeated and Yamashita has to get this gold hidden. He's got 174 tunnels finished, booby trapped, and hidden. And he's got one left that he needs to finish. So he orders his chief engineers to finalize this last tunnel and seal it. Now, his engineers knew everything about all these tunnels. They knew where they were, what booby traps were used, how they worked, everything. But what they didn't know was Yamashita's final plan. As the story goes, he has the engineers finishing up this last tunnel, finalizing the plans for everything. He is actually on the outside of this tunnel and he seals it himself, sealing the engineers into the tunnel with the treasure. So all of the engineers are in there. He blows dynamite at the exterior of the tunnel, sealing it off and sealing the engineers within.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
taking
now,
care of anybody that could tell where the tunnels were or anybody that could read the maps or describe the booby traps.
Exactly.
Boom. And okay.
Right.
Thanks for playing.
Yeah, exactly. So he left them in there to die of starvation or the elements or go crazy before whatever. So they're now, you know, as the story said, they were to protect this gold forever is what the story says. And I'm sure that last tunnel is haunted as hell. If that's the case.
No kidding.
I would assume all of these tunnels are. If he killed people after digging them, I would assume all these tunnels are haunted.
Well, okay, so that brings up a question that I had in my head researching this is, so 174 tunnels in, had he just used the same crew over and over and been digging these tunnels one at a time? And save the last one to kill everybody? Because at some point, somebody's going to go, hey, when you get done digging this tunnel, this SOB is going to kill you.
Yep. I honestly think he used, it was several crews from my understanding. Like, he may have had one crew dig a couple tunnels.
Yeah. And
then he killed them. And the thing was, they were POWs and slaves. So he would just go get them and get them from any part of the Japanese Empire at the time. So they wouldn't be able to say, hey, dude, you know, this guy's going to kill you because he'd just go grab some and say, hey, here's what you're doing now. You know, pull them out of some camp and whatever and say, here's what you're doing now.
Yeah. But again, I'd be like, if you're just going to kill me, why am I going to dig? So
yeah, no kidding.
They had to not know.
Yeah, I don't think any of them knew going into it that they were going to die after they finished the tunnel.
Or maybe it's one of those deals where, well, if I dig the tunnel, I can devise a plan to not die.
Well, that would be my dumbass trying to figure that out.
Yeah,
so
and they're just digging away. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I'd be the guy plotting, and it wouldn't work out for me, but I would try. All right, so let's take a second and talk about one of our longtime sponsors, HelloFresh. Now, if you don't know what HelloFresh is a meal kit delivery service and you get fresh, pre-measured ingredients and mouth-watering seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. You can skip trips to the grocery store, and you can count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Now, fall is busy.
Oh, yeah.
It's busier for us, man, with school and then the show. Fall is our busiest season with the show. I mean, it really is. So the good thing about HelloFresh is that it can save you time that, you'd otherwise spend on meal planning, shopping, and chopping and all this other stuff, so you can get back to what matters, either school for your kids or we can get back to doing show stuff so we don't get too far behind and start pulling our hair out.
Yeah, and one of the big things that Amanda always tries to do is have something for supper on the nights that we record, so that I'm not coming in and eating supper at 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
Okay, and HelloFresh makes that super easy because we already know what we're going to have. We already have everything we need to make it, and you can lay it out and knock it out. And the kids being able to help makes it that much easier. And plus, they have a great time doing it. And the meal is fantastic.
That's right.
Yeah. The fall harvest is officially on with HelloFresh. Count on seasonal recipes like pumpkin cinnamon rolls.
Oh, those will be good.
Oh, yeah. Friendsgiving-ready sides, as well as fresh, high-quality ingredients that travel from the farm to your front door in less than a week. And you get a better value. HelloFresh is over 30% cheaper than shopping at a grocery store, with pre-portioned ingredients that ensure you won't spend money on excess food that ends up going in the trash. So Graveyard Tales listeners can go to HelloFresh.com/Graveyard14 and use our promo code Graveyard14. That's GRAVEYARD14 for up to 14 free meals, including free shipping.
That's amazing. So all you got to do to get that is go to HelloFresh.com/Graveyard14 and use our promo code Graveyard14, GRAVEYARD14, and get up to 14 free meals, including free shipping. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. Now, 3 months after this, World War II is over, and General Yamashita is actually put on trial. And like I said, he's found guilty of war crimes. So he's sentenced to death by hanging. So there is video out there of Yamashita at the trial. And, it's 1940s quality video, so it's not that great, but you can tell by the look on his face, he knows what's happening, and he's stone-faced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a bad mamma jamma. He's a old war general. I'll put it that way. He's hardened. But with his death, he actually takes the secrets of the treasure to his grave. He didn't tell anybody before he died. And again, as the story goes, there's only one other person who knows about the tunnels, and that's Prince Chichibu. Now, the problem is in 1953, Prince Chichibu dies of tuberculosis. So at this point, no one is left that knows where the gold is hidden. Mm-hmm. Everybody who's dug the tunnels, he's killed. All of his engineers, he sealed in the last tunnel and killed. He's been killed. And Prince Chichibu, the brother of the emperor, has died of tuberculosis. So at this point, it seems like the gold and all of the treasures have been lost forever.
Yeah, and, after Yamashita's execution, stories of the treasure began to spread as surviving soldiers returned home. And with so many possible locations, the chances of discovering at least one stash was enough to really whet the appetite of treasure hunters.
Sure. And you said that stories are the thing. That's the deal, is nobody knew where this was, but they all knew that the Japanese army was amassing this gold.
Right.
So when they went home, they were like, we had all this gold. Yamashita was supposed to take care of it. We don't know what happened to it, but it's out there somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this is a good time to kind of talk about what's fact and what's fiction with this. So we know about Yamashita's career. We know he was a real person. He was a Japanese general. We know where he was. We also know that it's a fact that the Japanese were looting all of Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
That happened. It's not maybe it seems like, no, they did it.
Right.
We know they did it. And so we know Yamashita existed. We know that the treasure existed. And based on the fact that all of those artifacts and all of that gold that was stolen hadn't just turned up, or at least somebody goes, yeah, look at this, Yep. Japan says, hey, I know we just lost this war, but check out all this new stuff we got.
Yeah, right. We lost the war, but I got stacks of gold bars back here.
That's right. This guy over here, he's got a shiny new gold gate, around his house,
Right.
You didn't see that. Okay, so that's what we know is true. Okay.
Right.
Now, all the story of how he did this, the tunnels and everything, that's up for speculation. We don't know, because the people that did know, they were all killed or in Yamashita's case, executed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's something to keep in mind as you think about the people that have gone after this treasure.
Right.
There's a really good chance that it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you know what? Just traipsing off to the jungle to go look for this stuff, that's not simple. I mean, that's just, you're just not going to pack up and go, hey, we're going to the Philippines for a week and we're going to hunt for treasure. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
The jungle is dangerous.
Oh, okay? Yeah.
I mean,
even for experienced people,
that's exactly
dangerous.
Right. For people that know what they're doing, stomping and digging around in the jungle, it's not an easy thing, and it's certainly not a safe thing. So there have been a number of accidental deaths and injuries and financial losses that have plagued the people that have tried to go and find this treasure.
That's a common theme with treasure hunting.
That's right. That's right. And as I brought up before, how are they so sure that it's in the Philippines? How are they sure the treasure, it's there at all? That
right.
Any of this treasure, or that it just didn't make it all to Japan, or it was lost somewhere else. Now, and there's been debate about that.
Yep, that's the thing. I mean, these are all tales after the war. There's no real firsthand telling of this story.
Yeah.
So there could have been nothing left in the Philippines when the U.S. invaded. It could have all already made it to Japan.
Right. That's exactly right. So, as I said, there's been some debate. The Philippines National Historical Institute chairman and historian Ambeth Ocampo, he said for the past 50 years, many people, both Filipinos and foreigners, have spent their time, money, and energy in search of Yamashita's elusive treasure. That's a quote. Now, Ocampo also said, quote, "What makes me wonder is that for the past 50 years, despite all the treasure hunters, their maps, oral testimony, and sophisticated metal detectors, nobody has found a thing."
Right.
So he makes a good point. With modern equipment, with all these people trying to find it, if it was there, wouldn't they have found something? Maybe. But again, we're talking about the mountainous. We're talking about the mountainous jungles of the Philippines.
Yep. Just search Philippine jungles, and whatever pictures you see, just imagine trying to search that for a hole in the mountains.
Yeah, I know. Maybe you would have found something. Maybe not. That's some serious looking.
Yep.
Now, Ricardo Jose, history professor from the University of the Philippines, he's questioned the theory that the treasure from mainland Southeast Asia was transported to the Philippines at all. Because he says, and Adam brought this up earlier, by 1943, the Japanese were no longer in control of the seas. It doesn't make sense to bring something that valuable to the Philippines when you know it's going to be lost to the Americans anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He says the more rational thing would have been to send it to Taiwan or to China. And so, as Adam mentioned, they stopped transporting this treasure to Japan because the U.S. had pretty well decimated, the bulk of their navy. And so the ships had to go elsewhere. So they started going to the Philippines. That's the thought, because they were like, we're going to start shipping this to Yamashita in the Philippines, and he's going to handle it. So that's the thought process of the idea that the treasure made it to the Philippines.
Right.
But Jose makes a good point. Why even try? You've got it right here on the mainland. Why not just take it to a place you already occupy and hide it there?
Right. Keep it there and keep it safe, because you've got to transport it. That puts it in danger. And then you got to hope that Yamashita can get it buried without being found. So, why transport it to one central location?
So a lot of people went after this treasure and came up empty-handed. But probably the most famous story about this treasure, or any part of it being found, is that of Rogelio Roger Domingo Roxas. Now, Roxas was a former Filipino soldier who had worked as a locksmith before he allegedly discovered a cave north of Manila with a hidden chamber full of gold bars and a giant golden Buddha. Now, the cave was on a plot of state-owned land near Baguio General Hospital in Baguio on January 24th, 1971. Okay? Now, it says allegedly discovered because they had a really hard time showing that this was actually Yamashita's treasure or any part of it.
Sure.
How he had gotten his hands on it, what actually existed and what didn't. But he apparently found something. Now, Roxas claimed that you could take the head of the Buddha statue off. And when you took it off, that it had a hollowed out portion inside that contained at least 2 handfuls of uncut diamonds.
That's just incredible.
I know. And this is just
if
very
that's
small
true,
part.
that's incredible.
And it's just a very small part. So the Roxas discovery story goes like this. Now, sometime in 1970, Roxas's group began digging on state land near Baguio General Hospital. Now, after about 7 months of searching and digging, 24 hours a day, as they say, the group broke into a system of tunnels. Now, inside the tunnels, this group found wiring, radios, bayonets, rifles, and a human skeleton wearing a Japanese army uniform. Oh, what a giveaway.
Yep, that would sound like that 175th tunnel.
Yeah. Now, after several weeks of digging and exploring within the tunnels, Roxas's group found a 10-foot thick concrete enclosure in the floor of the tunnel. Now, on January 24th, 1971, they broke through the enclosure, and inside, Roxas discovered the gold-colored Buddha statue, which he estimated to be about 3 feet in height. He said the statue was extremely heavy. It required 10 men to transport it to the surface using a chain block hoist, ropes, and rolling logs. Now, although he said he never weighed the statue, how the heck was he going to do that?
Yeah, right.
He estimated the weight to be 1 ton. That's a 3-foot tall statue weighing 1 ton.
That's dense.
Yeah.
And how'd he move it if it was 1 ton?
No kidding. That'd be like dragging a car up there.
And dragging a couple elephants.
It was full of mercury. That's how.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. It was packed with unobtainium, which is the densest.
So Roxas told his workers to transport the statue to his home and place it in a closet. All right, so the statue weighs 1 ton, and he's going to put it in a closet, and it's only 3 feet tall?
Yeah.
Okay? And it's got at least a small hollowed-out portion that was full of diamonds.
I don't know about you, but I, A, couldn't get that into my closet, and B, if I did, it would probably break through my floor.
Yeah. Now, I will say this, because I double-checked. In the research, it was TONNE. So I had to do some Google foo and make sure that was not a different amount of measure than TON. But according to what I found, and y'all may correct me, it's the same. It's just a different spelling, or approximately the same, as it would, it would be metric.
Right.
But either way, this thing was outrageously heavy.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll put a picture in Patreon of him with the statue, because I found a picture of him. So
yeah. So anyway, moving on. I digressed. Roxas also found a large pile of boxes underneath the concrete enclosure. And he said it was about 50 feet from where the Buddha statue had been discovered. Now, he came back the next day and opened one of the small boxes. It contained 24 1-inch by 2 1/2-inch bars of gold. One box contained 24 bars of gold. Now, Roxas said that he estimated that the boxes on average were about the size of a case of beer. And he says they were stacked 5 or 6 feet high over an area 6 feet wide and 30 feet long.
Good grief.
That is a lot of gold.
That's a ton of gold. A TONNE of gold.
Now, this is funny to me. Roxas said he didn't open any of the other boxes. I would have been so excited. I'd have been like a kid at Christmas. I'm opening every one of these damn boxes.
Yeah. Even if I'm not moving them, I'm opening them.
That's right. Of course, I'm not standing in a hole in the jungle either.
True.
But a few weeks later, Roxas returned to blast the tunnel closed, planning to sell the Buddha statue in order to obtain funds for an operation to remove the rest of the treasure.
How can anybody buy a 1-ton Buddha statue and get it back to their house?
Yeah, what are you going to do? Put it on eBay?
Yeah, right.
I mean, not everybody's going to have a 1-ton Buddha statue full of diamonds. I mean, where are you going to go to sell this?
Right.
Nonetheless,
throw up some red flags, won't it?
It's 1970. I mean, heck, somebody would have bought it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Roxas tried to do this the right way. He was trying to contact Judge Marcos, but he was unsuccessful. Now, during the following weeks, he had sold 7 of the gold bars and was looking for a buyer for the Buddha statue. Now, Roxas would testify that Kenneth Cheatham, the representative of one prospective buyer, drilled a small hole under the arm of the Buddha to test the metal. And
Don't trust anybody named Cheatham.
That's right. I actually just noticed that. But Cheatham found out that, according to his test, it was solid 22 karat gold.
Wow.
So Roxas also testified that a second prospective buyer, Luis Mendoza, also tested the metal using a nitric acid test and concluded that it was at least more than 20 carats. Yeah, wow.
That's incredible. If it's true, that's incredible.
Now, it was soon after, well, before I get into this, somebody was missing their big-ass heavy Buddha statue.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't get a bunch of gold and decide, let's make a big, heavy Buddha statue. No, they took that from somewhere.
Yep, exactly.
So I would love to know, where they got it. Who had this?
Right. Yeah, because the story goes that they were melting it down into ingot and bars for easier transport. You would melt down a 1-ton statue to make bars because it would be easier to transport instead of this sitting Buddha statue that would be hard to get on a ship, something like that. I don't know. And if it's not part of the Yamashita hoard, then wouldn't somebody come forward and say, "Oh no, that's mine.
Buddha.
My daughter took our Buddha out on a play date in the park and lost it. That's ours."
She put it in her wagon. That's how she was dragging it around town.
Yeah. Somebody would have come forward.
I would think. But maybe, just maybe, if this was one of the last tunnels that Yamashita did, he was in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And it may have been way too much to try, but he would have had to get this big, heavy thing to the jungle to hide it.
Yep. But, it's lining up. Quickly done, so it would have been just kind of thrown in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
There was a body of a Japanese soldier in there, which would line up with sealing in the engineers. Mm-hmm. So that seems to line up so far.
Now, it was soon after this, Roxas claimed that President Ferdinand Marcos learned of his discovery and had him arrested, beaten, and he took away his Buddha.
Good Lord.
Okay. Now, Roxas says that this was in retaliation to his vocal campaign to reclaim the Buddha and the remainder of the treasure taken away from him. Ferdinand continued to have Roxas threatened, beaten, and eventually incarcerated for over a year. So once he was released from prison, Roxas put his claims against Marcos on hold until he lost the presidency in 1986. But in 1988, Roxas and this group called the Golden Buddha Corporation, which was an Atlanta-based group dedicated to Roxas's claim of ownership, and they also now held the ownership rights to the treasure that Roxas claimed was stolen from him. Now, they filed a lawsuit against Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos in a Hawaiian state court, seeking damages for the theft and the surrounding human rights abuses that were committed against him. So,
I would say that is human rights abuses.
You took my treasure, you beat me up, you threatened me, you imprisoned me. Okay? Yep. That was all crappy.
Oh,
Ferdinand, So I want my treasure back, and I want you to pay for the awful things you did to me. Fair enough.
Yep. I agree.
And I'm going to go to Hawaii to do it.
Hey, why not? Safer than being there.
But Roxas died on the eve of the trial.
Oh.
But prior to his death, he had given deposition testimony that would be later used as evidence. Now, the official cause of his death was tuberculosis, but according to news reports from the time, no autopsy was performed, and a lot of folks suspected some foul play. So
that's what I was thinking. I was about to ask if there was reports on how he died, because it seems a little suspicious.
Well, sure.
That right before the trial, he died of tuberculosis.
Yeah. How convenient. How do you fake tuberculosis?
Yeah, you don't. You pay people off.
Yeah. He's got a bullet in his head. Tuberculosis.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can write whatever you want to on the autopsy paper.
Now, I don't want to bore you guys with all the legal details. So, to summarize, this lawsuit ultimately concluded that Roxas found a treasure, and although the Hawaiian State Court was not required to determine whether this particular treasure was a part of Yamashita's gold, the testimony the court relied on in reaching its conclusion definitely pointed in that direction. Roxas was allegedly following a map from the son of a Japanese soldier. Roxas allegedly relied on tips provided from Yamashita's interpreter, and Roxas allegedly found samurai swords and the skeletons of dead Japanese soldiers in the treasure chamber. So all this led up to the United States Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal to summarize the allegations leading to Roxas's final judgment as follows. The Yamashita treasure was found by Roxas and stolen from Roxas by Marcos's men. So they determined that, yeah, this was what he found. We think it was a part of Yamashita's gold. Ferdinand Marcos stole it from him, and did some pretty mean stuff.
Yep.
So the court awarded Roxas' estate and the Golden Buddha Corporation $22 billion.
Whoa.
Now, with interest, that ballooned to just over $40 billion.
Holy moly.
Now, a Marcos family attorney dismissed the award because he said, it's monopoly money. You can't collect it.
Mm-hmm.
He says the entire estate from the Marcoses is tied up in the Philippine government. There's nothing there. There's nothing to get.
I mean, again, that seems fishy. I mean, I get that you wouldn't be able to get the billions of dollars out of him, but it seems that fishy that all of his stuff is tied up where it can't be accessed.
Yeah.
It's either fishy or he's a super sly businessman.
Yeah. And I didn't include dates on this, and I should have, but just to kind of give you a frame of reference, all of this has been going on for years.
Mm-hmm.
And, the last thing I read about anything court related to this settlement, to this award, 2019.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, this is still going on. I mean, this is not something that happened 30, 40 years ago. Nope. Still going on.
Yeah. And you'll see
Go ahead.
You'll see articles out there that say Yamashita's gold found ? And stuff like that. And that's what they're talking about is the court case that Matt's talking about.
Yeah. If you peruse the right news feeds, when this stuff happens, you'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it crops up everything that we've discussed so far, as far as this case.
Right.
So that's where it is now. I mean, and apparently Roxas's son asked for the Buddha statue. And according to what I found, they sent him one, but it's fake. And the real one is actually known to be sitting in the Philippines, as like property of the court.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And didn't the one they sent him, they know it's fake because the head didn't come off and there was no internal cavity.
Yeah, something like that. And it didn't weigh right. There was a lot of things wrong.
The diamonds aren't even in the original one anymore. Those magically disappeared.
Yeah, uncut diamonds, they're absolutely untraceable.
Yep.
So, there's no way you're getting those back. Somebody's wearing them and doesn't even realize it.
Yeah, exactly.
But still, this would only be considered a small portion of the overall treasure. And that's a fact that still fuels the fire for a lot of treasure hunters today, is 174 tunnels, and we're talking about one of them.
Yep.
Okay? And how much was in this one tunnel? And there's 170 some odd more out there, potentially.
Yep.
So there's another theory about Yamashita's gold, and that's that the United States secretly seized it at the end of World War II. And Yamashita, one of the only men who would have known for certain how much treasure there was and where it had been hidden, was executed rather hastily, and that's how they covered it up, that they already had it. And so there was no chance for him to pass on that information or, to rat him out and say, hey, I buried this treasure, and they found a bunch of it or whatever. So one Captain Edward Lansdale, who was a U.S. officer of the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, which was a predecessor of the CIA, interrogated Yamashita's personal driver, who revealed some of the locations to which he had driven the general during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. And they had these secret vaults. Okay? So Lansdale apparently made a huge discovery. It was gold. And a lot of it. And there were precious stones, artwork, and other treasures like we mentioned before, religious artifacts, things like that. And they just were considered to be fair game. They were, it was like, hey, look at this. Where'd you find that new television? It fell off a truck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that apparently happened in Germany during World War II as well.
It did happen in Germany during World War II, and that's kind of how the Japanese got the idea.
Yeah,
is they kind of followed the whole German idea of plundering and snatching up anything that would be considered valuable, not just gold and jewels, but works of art. Adam said rare books. Anything that would have a significant value attached to it was fair game. Now, proponents of this theory suggest that the vaults were cleared out by the U.S. intelligence personnel in a top-secret operation over the next 2 years, and the treasure within was secretly deposited in hundreds of banks all over the world. Now, the gold allegedly was used to fund top-secret black operations conducted by the CIA over the next few decades, and to influence various foreign governments over the course of the Cold War. Now, Sterling Seagrave and his wife Peggy Seagrave have written 2 books about this. One is the Yamato Dynasty, The Secret History of Japan's Imperial Family, and Gold Warriors, America's Secret Recovery of Yamashita's Gold. Now, they came out in 2000 and 2003, respectively. Now, the Seagraves contend that Edward Lansdale and one Severino Garcia Diaz Santa Romana discovered the Golden Lily vaults in caves north of Manila, Remember where Roxas was digging around? North of Manila. Now, Lansdale would brief General Douglas MacArthur on the find, and according to the books, more than 170 tunnels and caves were found, and these accounts were called black gold accounts. And they suggest that there were 42 different countries that they had these black gold accounts in, to hide this money, all the riches, all that, and actually convert it into something that could be spent.
It's possible that both of these things are true.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the government found 170, let's say, there's still theoretically 5 more tunnels left, and he could have found one of the 5 left, and it was the last one hastily done, and that's why there was all that in there. So it's possible that both of these accounts are actually true.
Yeah, there's a really good chance that they're both true. And again, that's what fuels the treasure hunters today, is that regardless of the truth to Roxas's story or to the Seagraves theory, it still leaves treasure out there.
Yep.
It's not all accounted for.
Right.
So they have something to go look for. And even if you believe everything about Roxas's cave that he found, one vault is all you need.
Oh, yeah.
Even heck, you don't even need all of it. You just need some of it.
Just pocket some of it and get out.
And you're almost instantly one of the richest people in the world.
Yep.
Okay. Even if you've got a big team of people hunting for it, you're still all rich.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Adam, let's take a minute and talk about one of tonight's sponsors, a new sponsor to the show, Raycon. Now, we're all getting back into a normal routine, or at least we're trying. And no matter how you feel about getting back out there, there's no denying that it's going to be an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
So when the world gets just too loud, something I love to do is kick back, listen to my music, and pop in my Raycon wireless earbuds.
Oh, I know, man. I love Raycons. I've had Raycons for years, even before we got them as a sponsor. So this is an awesome thing for me because I love my Raycons. I use them all the time. They're always in my head. Whether I'm doing work around the house or I'm working in the shop doing like woodworking projects, I'll put them in to drown out the sound of the saws and stuff like that, or going to the gym. That's the best thing right there is popping in your Raycons. You've got no wires hanging down around your neck. You don't have these cans like we've got on now for going to the gym, which would get irritating, and they don't fall out because they're one of the best ways to listen. They come with a bunch of gel tips that you can change and pop in, and unlike some other brands, which we're not going to name, that we've all used, they don't stick out of your ears. And they have a 32-hour battery life, so you can listen to whatever you want, when you want, for a really long time. And that's great. I mean, it's one of the selling features for me was how long the battery will last.
Yeah, and they start at half the price of other premium audio brands, but they sound just as good.
Probably better.
Yeah, and Raycons come with a 45-day happiness guarantee. So you really can't lose here. Give them a try, and you'll see what we mean. To create your own soundtrack with Raycon right now, our listeners can get 15% off their Raycon order at buyraycon.com/tales. That's buy, BUY Raycon, RAYCON.com/tales, TALES, to save 15% on Raycon.
That's right. Graveyard Tales listeners can get 15% off their Raycon order at buyraycon.com/tales. That's BUYRAYCON.com/TALES to get 15% off Raycons. Buyraycon.com/tales.
So that's what drives people to continue to look, just like they do in the History Channel series, The Lost Gold of World War II.
Yep.
Now, in the series, treasure hunter John Casey and his team search for Yamashita's treasure, but as they go along, the mystery gets stranger and stranger, and they find one obstacle after another, searching for this stolen treasure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's television.
Sure.
And there's 2 seasons. Okay? Now, don't get me wrong. I've watched the show. It's cool. I mean, it's fun. It's very interesting. If you're a history buff, it is fantastic. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of talk about artifacts. I mean, it is great. But it reminds me of the Oak Island thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because
the Japanese version of Oak Island.
Yeah. I mean, if they find it, yay. All right. Another show.
Yep.
So they hadn't found anything yet. They just keep finding problems. But they find a lot of the things, especially tunnels with concrete caps, buried. So those kind of things are consistent with Roxas's story and the story behind how these tunnels were constructed. So when you start to find actual physical evidence that the story you're following has within it, you begin to say, here it is. This is not just a legend. This is fact. This really happened. And so that's how the show goes. They find things like that. They find links to the story. They find things that they weren't for sure were true, and they figure out, yeah, they are true. So it does really paint a picture that the treasure is there. They just hadn't found it yet. Plus, you got to know they're still dealing with even if they do find a tunnel that has something in it, you still have to be concerned about booby traps. I mean, explosives and stuff. So you can't just go digging down in these caves and be like, look, hey, we found it. There's a process that has to be taken. And, Casey has to get I say Casey. The History Channel has to get permission, not just from the Filipino government, but from landowners and so forth, to actually go and poke around and take this heavy machinery out there and all this equipment to hunt for this stuff. So it's not an easy task, but it makes for good television.
Sure.
And I'm not saying anything is made up, but it is it's very dramatized. Is that the word?
Yep.
Is it dramatized?
Dramatized.
Okay, dramatized. Where did I come up with dramatized? What a weird word.
Southern Dictionary. I do it too.
It's me. I make up I have my own language, y'all. I need to write a book, and then y'all can learn how to understand what Matt is talking about. But it's really cool to me. I'd love to believe that any of this treasure is there.
Oh yeah.
And that someday, but I did the same with Oak Island. I mean, I bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. I was like, oh yeah, they're going to find it. They're going to find it. They're going to find it. And
I still think there's something on Oak Island.
As much
what
as
it is, I don't know.
As much as they've dug up Oak Island, it's got to be like a Swiss cheese island now.
True. Maybe it's that there was something on Oak Island and somebody found it years ago and
didn't say anything.
Yeah, they didn't say anything, and now you've got just people going out there blowing things up. And I mean, that could be just like the Yamashita's gold thing. Yeah. The U.S. government maybe found it, and they took it, and they're not going to say anything, so you got people going out there for it.
Yeah.
Oak Island could be the same way. The Canadian government may have found it and just didn't tell anybody.
Yeah. And a lot of Filipino historians will say that because of the way the country is, I mean, it's made up of thousands of islands, and only about 2,000 of them are actually populated. It leaves a lot of unpopulated islands that make up the Philippines, so there's a lot of potential there to go hunting around and for treasure to be never found. But because of that, these historians say there's always been a treasure in the Philippines. Yeah. Always. These stories have always existed. They just change a little bit. 100 years ago or 200 years ago, they're talking about pirate treasure.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. After, they're talking about from a Filipino-American War. They're talking about barrels of silver coins, somewhere, in the islands. Now it's, after World War II, it's Yamashita's treasure.
And I honestly would not be surprised if all of it were true. With as many islands, with as few as are inhabited, what if there are a bunch of different treasures out in the Philippines from different centuries? You've got, there is pirate treasure out there. There's treasure out there from before that. There's Yamashita's treasure. There's a bunch of different pockets. I mean, that could be the hoard for most of the world's treasures in the Philippines, and we just don't know about it.
That's true. I mean, and all of them are, they're legends, but they're all legit. I mean, there were pirates in the Pacific, and that would have been a logical location.
Yep.
I mean, an uninhabited part of the Philippines, sure. It makes sense. The fact that there would be, spoils that were hidden from previous wars, it makes sense. So I don't know. I mean, you're right. I agree. There could be all kinds of treasure all over the Philippines. And it's just, again, we talk, islands, multiple islands, jungle, mountains. It's not the easiest place to go look.
No.
You're not wandering in a desert looking for an X on the ground and start digging.
Right. If you're in the Philippines and hearing this and you decide to go out looking for this treasure, please keep sending us correspondence.
Yeah, let us know.
We want to know what's happening.
And don't get hurt.
Yeah, no kidding.
And ask permission. Because that's a surefire way to get hurt.
Oh, yeah.
But what do you guys think? I mean, I'm going to ask you what you think about two things. One, do you think Yamashita's gold is in the Philippines? Do you think it's real? Do you think that Japan got the majority of it and used it? Did the U.S. get it? Did we take it away and fuel our efforts in the Cold War? Maybe. I think one explanation is as good as another, but I just want to know what you guys think. The other thing is, let us know what you think about this style show. This is not a typical Graveyard Tales topic. But
in a way it is, though.
In a way it is, but this is more historical. It's mysterious, so that's how Adam and I, came up with the idea to do this. But it branches out to, a topic that, and a genre of topics that we haven't really hit on that hard. So, what do you think? If you like this, is is a good palate cleanser from listening to ghosts and cryptids and so forth, let us know, and we'll look into doing more shows like this one. But while you're over there letting us know, and you can surf around the web and get to our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. And on our website, you can find links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise. You can listen to the show, and you can become a patron. And Adam mentioned at the beginning of the show, going to patreon.com/graveyardtales, where you can sign up and support the show and get some exclusive content that's not available to everyone else. So you can get some cool content, some swag, and you can be the envy of all your friends, and you can support the show at the same time. It's a win-win.
Yeah, right.
But to let us know about your thoughts about the show, about Yamashita's gold, or any other past things we've talked about, the best place to do that is in our Facebook group. So you can go on Facebook, search Graveyard Tales, and that's where you'll find us. It's a pretty big group full of amazing folks. You see something new and unique every day.
Oh yeah.
You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter. Just search Graveyard Tales. And don't forget to go and rate and review us on iTunes. That helps us come up the charts, which makes it easier for people to find us and join the graveyard. So, it's been a pretty long show here, Adam.
Yep, I enjoyed it though. I enjoyed our time here.
I do too. So until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.
And blah, 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 blah.